Okay, I think it's recording.
Thank you. Excellent. Hi, everybody. I think people are still arriving, but let's already start. Just shortly, some housekeeping rules. I think you are all muted anyway automatically when you log on, but please do keep muted while the webinar is ongoing so we can avoid any background noise. And there will be time for questions later. So later when we open for questions, you're very welcome to unmute yourself. In the meantime, if you have any trouble seeing the screen or hearing us, please also do feel free to type in the chat box and we'll do our best to help you solve the issues, but hopefully they're none. So welcome today to our launch of our new report called Ready to Drive the Market, Experiences from Road Testing, the Guidelines for Providing Product Sustainability Information. My name is Bettina Heller from UN Environment, and I will moderate the webinar today and also give you a short introduction for setting the context just now. And later on, you will hear from my colleague Fernanda Jimenez about the report itself, and also from Jack McKibben from Cruelty Free International, who is one of our road testers and will give a first-hand testimony of how they perceive the process. So then afterwards, as I said, we'll open up for questions and we'll be happy to hear from you. Thank you, Fernanda. So today is the global webinar launch of this report, and thank you all for joining. Actually, we also launched a report in an in-person event yesterday at the United Nations Environment Assembly, which is happening at the moment in Nairobi in Kenya. And the side event was about innovative solutions and partnerships. You can see here a photo from the launch yesterday evening. And we see this report really as an example of both innovation and partnerships. If we can go to the next. Thank you. So why is it about partnerships? This report is an outcome of the One Planet Network Consumer Information Program. I'm sure many of you have heard about the program, but just to recap, the One Planet Network is an implementation mechanism of SDG 12 on sustainable consumption and production. And the Consumer Information Program is led by the Environment Ministries of Germany and Indonesia and Consumers International, and supported by an advisory committee and partner institutions. The logic of the program is really to bring together many actors that work around consumer information and to work together to achieve better solutions and better practices around consumer information. And this report was really developed in a collaborative manner under the program. If we can go to the next, please. Thank you. Now, as I said, my colleague Fernanda will tell you more about the report itself. But just to set a bit the context, the report stems from a road testing exercise, as the title said, from our so-called guidelines for providing product sustainability information. And I will shortly introduce these guidelines to you so that you can then better understand what the other report is about. So these guidelines were released 2 years ago also as a collaborative a mechanism of this program, and the objectives were to contribute to achievement of SDG 12, especially target 12.8, which is around relevant information, to improve the reliability of consumer information, and then a twofold objective. On the one hand, to set a common ground of minimum requirements so that we remove the potential for greenwashing, and to also always encourage organizations to go beyond what they're already doing, to take leadership and communicate that to their consumers. This twofold objective is also mirrored in the 10 principles that the guidelines are about. You will see them on the next slide. So this is the key components of these guidelines. As I said, one hand, we wanted to minimize the potential for greenwashing. So we have 5 fundamental principles, which we say are the minimum requirements you have to meet if you want to communicate to consumers around the sustainability performance of your products. And then to go beyond and always improve over time, we have 5 aspirational principles. So you can see here the 5 fundamental principles are reliability, which is about building claims on a reliable basis in terms of data, methodologies, assumptions. Relevance, which is around talking on major improvements in areas that matter. So are the significant aspects of the sustainability performance of the product covered? Do we address them, and then do we communicate that to the consumers? Clarity, which is around making the information useful for the consumers, so ensuring that it's clear that the claim is really on that product, that is easy to understand for the consumers, that any limits of the claim are clearly stated, because of course we can't always communicate about everything, but we have to be clear on what we actually improved and how we communicate that. Transparency, which is around traceability of the claim. So can those consumers that do care to get that information, can they trace who developed the claim, which methods they used, and which is the evidence that was used to come to that claim? And finally, the last of the must-meet principles is accessibility. So is it easy for consumers to get the information? Is the claim clearly visible, and is it close to the product? Is it close to the moment when the consumer actually needs the information? And then we have 5 aspirational principles, which are not mandatory, but as the name says, should give aspiration to go beyond over time. And these are more self-explanatory, I think, from the names, but just to go quickly through them. We have the 3 dimensions of sustainability, which is, of course, about showing the complete picture of product sustainability. Still quite a challenge to give the same information on environmental, social, and economic dimensions. Then the behavior change and longer-term impact. So how can we engage more actively with consumers to help them to actually move from information to action and to play an active role? Multi-channel and innovative approach. So in today's times, very relevant. How can we use the various tools and communication channels out there to communicate with consumers at the time when they need the information? How can we make sure it's complementary and does not overload the consumer? Collaboration, so working with others to increase the acceptance and credibility of the claim, so to build trust with consumers by involving them, but also by involving other institutions, academia, other companies, and also employing joint channels for communication to consumers. And finally, comparability, so how to ensure that if the claim is based on a comparison claim, that it is actually substantiated and helpful for consumers, and around following approaches that are initiated by governments or third parties on comparability. So these are our 10 principles, and they are at the heart of the new report as well. And Fernanda will tell you more about this now. So I leave you in her very capable hands.
Thank you so much, Bettina, for this nice introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. So just before we dive into the main results of this new report, basically, I thought we could just present a brief overview of these kind of main objectives of this project that we call the road testing. So first, we wanted to understand how feasible it is to apply the guidelines, the principles that Bettina just shared. Second, we wanted to understand the main challenge around providing product sustainability information. And third, we wanted to collect good practices and share them as case studies. And in this project, the guidelines were tested by both companies and standard setting organizations that could then apply the principles, the 10 principles that Bettina shared, to their own claims. These are basically the 28 organizations that we called our road testers. You can see from their logos that they come actually from a broad range of characteristics in terms of geographical scope. So we have organizations from all world regions, different industry sectors, also industry size, different size. So we have both multinational organizations and also small and medium companies. And here I just wanted to take advantage of presenting their logos to thank very much each of one of the 28 road testing teams for having joined us in this exercise, and of course for their willingness to share the insights and their pretty much valuable experience with us. It's been really an extremely valuable exchange, so thank you very much, each one of you. So let's dive now into the main results that we collected in this exercise. So first of all, we did found out that it's in fact pertinent to have the two different categories of the principles. So as Bettina presented, we have both fundamental principles and aspirational principles. And this is relevant because organizations might be in different stages of development of their communications. So we found that aspirational principles are indeed more challenging for some organizations, and therefore they could be met over time as organizations progress the communication with consumers. We also found out that the 10 principles are very easy to comprehend in general, and the guidelines can therefore indeed help organizations in best communicating their claims. However, it's also very important to notice that we should consider that different organizations will experience the application of the guidelines differently. And what I mean by that is that in terms of the challenge and the strengths in meeting each of the principles. So I'm gonna just present some examples for you to understand what we mean by this kind of like considering the type of the organization, the type of the claim when they are trying to meet or trying to adhere to each of the principles. So here, for example, I've just brought 4 types of examples for you to understand what we mean by this variancy. So for example, for standard setting organizations, they generally found principle 7, the behavior change and longer term impact, hard to apply. This is because they usually do not have direct interaction with individual end consumers, because usually they are most focused on their business clients. So most of the standard setting organizations that joined our project has a more business-to-business component in their communications. And also, especially for single-issue certification schemes, the principle 6, which is the 3 dimensions of sustainability, is one of the hardest to apply because, of course, these organizations has explicit focus on specific sustainability issues, like since they are single-issue certification, and therefore, in their cases, overall sustainability is not claimed. And this is basically the case of Cruelty Free International, who will be sharing the experience with us later on today. And in terms of the companies, especially the companies that analyze self-assessed claims, they found the more difficult questions around rigor and credibility, which are principles 1, reliability, and principle 2, relevance. And this is even more common to small and medium companies. And still, with small and medium companies, they face greatest challenge when applying principle 8, which is about multi-channel innovative approach, and also principle 9, which talks about collaboration. And this might be because these 2 principles usually require or demand additional resources and planning for the organizations to meet. So availability of space on pack, complexity of sustainability information, and the lack of harmonized approach and definitions were essentially described as the main challenge for organizations to excel when communicating about their product sustainability performance to consumers. So the first one, availability of space on pack, it's pretty clear, basically because the road testers shared with us that the fact that they do have to include a message concerning, for example, safety, nutrition, health, or overall other types of performance, kind of make this kind of information compete with sustainability information. So it's basically a problem of space on pack to communicate this kind of information on sustainability. So in this case, we do understand that these organizations could then try and make their claims more clearly communicated online, and also try, for example, to collaborate with retailers to make sure consumers understand what their claim is about, not necessarily providing all the information on pack. The second challenge is about the complexity of sustainability information itself. So communicating sustainability performance in a simple way is still a great challenge for some of the road testers, especially for those road testers who has to communicate difficult technical terms. So, for example, one of the road testers shared with us that it's very hard for them to communicate clearly on the difference between, so for example, bio-based materials and biodegradable materials for the general public. So this kind of technical information that sometimes is required for them to communicate, it's another challenge for them to make it easier for consumers to understand. And finally, the lack of harmonized approach, and this is more for standard setting organizations, because although we do have like lots of standard setting organizations work very clear and in a very reliable manner in this topic, they are usually very diverse, and then these markets may be potentially confusing for consumers. So to address this challenge, it's necessary an extra effort to work towards greater harmonization between the various standard schemes. So based on the results and insights from this exercise, we recognized 4 following actions as crucial in order to further progress in the field of product sustainability information and, of course, advance the implementation of the guidelines. So they are about providing additional guidance on implementation of certain approaches and principles of the guidelines, also providing further instructions on how the guidelines could be applied by different types of organizations, different types of claims, and also enhancing collaborations and creating synergies, and finally working on policy level. And I'm now going very briefly into each of these following actions that we recognized. So first, within the first next step, which would be basically to provide additional guidance on the implementation of some approaches and principles, there are basically 6 topics in which we should focus our attention on. So the first one is hotspots analysis approach, and we recognize that the majority of road testers are not familiar with this approach prior to the road testing. So we thought that it's really important for us to, with our partners, of course, to offer more guidance to clarify what hotspots analysis means and its relevance to communicating product sustainability information. The second is on principle 4, which talks about transparency. And here we recognize the potential of new technologies. So for example, that data-enabled technologies, the potential that these kind of technological advancements can bring for progress in communicating with consumers. Hello? Okay, can you hear me, right?
Yes, can hear you.
Okay, good. And then the first step to advance this could be, for example, to collect case studies from companies that are already using data-enabled technologies for communicating product sustainability information to their consumers. And this is also an invitation for any of you who are here with us today. If you are aware of any good case study or good practice on that, we will be very much looking forward to hear from you. Principle 6, 3 dimensions of sustainability. This is one of the most challenging principles because we understand it requires substantial time and investment in the product development process to deal with the 3 dimensions of sustainability in one product. So more work should be done to further collaboration among certification schemes that could then complementarily address these gaps. So we also recognize that we should provide additional guidance on principle 7, behavior change and long-term impact. And this is very interesting because one activity moving forward could be definitely to strengthen partnerships with universities and research institutes that are already working in behavioral science. And this could provide organizations with practical insights on how they could perform on this issue of providing monitoring basically changing behavior of consumers. Principle 9, collaboration. We recognize that a crucial next step actually to involve consumers in the development of the claims. And this is very important for consumers to both be motivated and also educated to look at the information that has been provided to them. This, of course, might be challenging, especially for small and medium-sized organizations, because they have limited resources and capacity to involve other partners, and especially consumers in this case. And finally, comparability. So we did find out that it's necessary to work on the application of common metrics, and such common metrics could allow then organizations to make product comparisons in a way that could indeed support the consumers to make sustainable choices. And for this one, for instance, one step could be to define comparable methods and criteria for a higher number of product categories that we don't necessarily have today. So moving forward, the second activity would be to provide further instructions on how the guidelines could be applied by different types of organizations and claims. And these could be, for instance, to promote good practices from various types of organizations. So as we have been doing now, sharing good practice case studies from how both companies and standard setters are applying and testing the guidelines, and also based on different types of information tools, because in the road testing exercise, we have some road testers who analyzed labels, others analyze product declarations, some others analyze ratings or marketing claims or communication campaigns or life cycle assessments. So these are basically what we call claims, and it's important to give even more examples on how these guidelines could be used to communicate this kind of different information tools. Also considering single issue or multi-issue claims. Yeah, so basically to provide a good practice from these various types of tools, organization, approach, and status. And finally, we recognize that it's important to give even more practical advice for the corporate areas, especially areas working on marketing, procurement, and product development. Third, to enhance collaborations and create synergies, we could, for instance, build partnerships with key influencers or business or trade associations, rather than to approach individual companies on a bilateral basis, which was exactly what we did for the testing of the guidelines. But now moving forward to the implementation phase of the guidelines, after going through this testing, we thought that a good approach would be to focus on a replication effect. Promote activities to strengthen collaboration of retailers was, again, as I said before, important, because then we could address the problem of limited space on pack, for example, and also collaborate for country and sector level awareness raising, and then identifying national or sectoral specificities to increase the visibility of the guidelines. And for this, we are already trying to work on some specific sectors. For example, last night in Nairobi, as Bettina mentioned, during the official launch of this report, we basically partner with partners from the food sector. And the idea, one activity moving forward could be to try and address the guidelines for specific sectoral approaches. And finally, before I hand over to Bettina again, we also recognize it's important to work on policy level, and this could be done basically through different types of activities. So, for example, providing examples of how countries are already applying the guidelines, and with a view of making them a more concrete tool for governments in, for example, their procurement processes. We could also, for example, link to national processes and instruments, engaging with national marketing surveillance authorities or regulators that are responsible for overseeing consumer market claims on a national level. And with all of these, continuing to lift the guidelines to a more political and strategic global sphere. So I think that's all from my side for now. I'll be super happy to hear from your feedback on these kind of results, and of course, inviting you all to download the report, and then you can access all of these results in detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernanda. Thanks for this very nice overview. And let me also take the opportunity of, while we're looking at this slide where you can see some testimonies from some of our road testers, either around the process of road testing the guidelines or about the guidelines themselves, to thank Fernanda for her excellent work that she did in coordinating this process and really being very helpful, I think, and available for any questions the road testers had at any point. But also let me thank again all the organizations that either road tested the guidelines and also those organizations that helped us to reach out to companies and standard setters to identify our road testers. It's been a really helpful and collaborative process. And finally, well, this is a report from UN Environment and the International Trade Center, as our two organizations have led this process. But let me also thank the Ministry of Environment of Germany and the Ministry of Ecological and Solidarity Transition of France, who have supported this project since its beginning. So we wouldn't be here without all of our partners and all the help you gave us. Thanks so much. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So we will send you also the link where you can directly download the report after the webinar, but you can also use the website that Fernanda just showed. So what expects you in the report is even more information complementary to what Fernanda walked you through. You will read about each of the principles and what our road testers told us about how they feel that their claims meet these principles, which is a good indication for all of us working on these issues where more work is needed. And of course, we're always happy to also be in touch with you and hear about your experiences. As Fernanda also mentioned, is most of our road testers, they are also doing a case study, which we hope will help other companies, standard setting organizations, but also NGOs and others that work on these issues to apply the 10 principles of the guidelines, because the case studies allow you to really dive into detail in one claim in a certain sector and read about how this claim performs against the 10 principles. And how they feel that what they feel their good practices are, but also where they feel more work might be needed. So it can also hopefully help others to apply the guidelines to their claims and their contents. On this, oh, sorry, can you go back once? So on this product sustainability information hub that you can see here, you can find all of this information, the case studies, the report, the guidelines. We have also linked in other guidance documents around product sustainability information, because we realize that we aren't the only people working on this, and it's very important to us to recognize the valuable work of partners that we also build up on. You will also soon find here a self-assessment tool, an online self-assessment tool that you can use to analyze your own claim, to go through the 10 principles of the guidelines, and hopefully this online tool will help you lead a thought process within your teams around product sustainability information. So please do stay tuned for that. And then indeed we can please move on to the next slide. And it's my pleasure to welcome Jack, who is actually dialing in from Nairobi and who was also at the event yesterday. So thanks so much, Jack, for taking the time. And Jack works for Cruelty Free International, and they were one of our road testers. And Jack, we would love to hear from you around how you perceived the process, what you thought about the guidelines, whether you found the 10 principles helpful, and perhaps hear a bit more about how do you communicate with consumers and what are the elements that you think work really well, and where do you think more support might be needed in the future. So we tested before. I think it should work. Check. Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, excellent. Thanks so much.
No, thanks so much to you guys for the opportunity to join and to share our experiences. Like you said, we're here in Nairobi and the internet is a bit iffy and it's a bit breezy here with the wind. So if you ever can't hear us or the internet is too bad, just let me know and I can re-go over some points. But yeah, so I'm the public affairs advisor for Cruelty Free International. We're a newly joined member of the multi-advisory committee for consumer information, but we are an animal protection organisation working to end specifically animal testing worldwide. I'm based in London, but we have staff and offices around the world. And yeah, just we're going to take not too much time, but just to run through what our experiences were, what our challenges and successes, and like you said, Bettina, to how we communicate that with our consumers. So yeah, the next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. So a bit about what was road tested for us. So we run the Leaping Bunny. It's the international gold standard certification for cruelty-free cosmetics, also personal care products and household and cleaning products too. And the Leaping Bunny logo is the best assurance that a brand that is committed to driving animal testing out of its entire supply chain. So when we talk about cruelty-free, it's the fact that no animals have been tested upon throughout the life cycle, the manufacturing of a product. It's operated worldwide by ourselves, specifically in Europe, and also for our partners in America and across Asia as well. And currently at the moment we have over 1,200 brands who are certified worldwide. This ranges from small, medium enterprises in the UK to really big global multinationals such as CoverGirl and Coty most recently, that have been certified by us. And it's really, we've seen a huge increase in the Leaping Bunny interest and demand from businesses over the past 12 to 18 months in particular. This is due to the rise of consumers demanding more cruelty-free products, more awareness of this, and the fact that there have been certain bans in the European Union and across many countries now around the world that prohibit the use of animals for cosmetics testing. And so there's really a consensus building between consumers and businesses and slowly decision makers also on this. So the next slide, please. Perfect. So if I do some of our challenges first and then end on a more positive note with the successes. But as you said, Fernanda, we are a single issue certification scheme. So we focus obviously solely on whether a brand or product has tested on animals. And so when we were applying our, to the guidelines of the 3 dimensions of sustainability in particular, that was where it becomes particularly tricky because we can't sort of examine the different aspects of sustainability, unfortunately, but we recognize that that is a limitation to our single issue certification, and we yeah, have sort of accepted this. And what we're working on is we know, we hear from our businesses and consumers that the fact that they shop for the Leaping Bunny, their cruelty-free products, as part of a wider sort of lifestyle choice to be more sustainable and to be more ethical with their consumption choices. It's just at the moment we are yet to really develop strong evidence and data to support this, and case studies from our businesses and consumers. But this is a real focus for us over the coming months and years, is to build that evidence bank to show not only that the Leaping Bunny logo is increasingly demanded from consumers, we sort of have that already, but also we want to really showcase the business benefits that brands and products will get from being certified. So this will look at obviously the profits, the increase in profits from being certified, but also the increase in brand recognition and brand imaging as well once they have the Leaping Bunny logo on their product. And also, as mentioned before, one of the other challenges was our lack of awareness of the hotspot analysis approach. We are definitely keen to sort of, now we have an understanding, to look at, could this be applied throughout our work and throughout the Leaping Bunny. So next slide, please. Perfect. So yeah, there were many positives about this experience for us. We really found that we had strong responses to the fundamental principles. So in regards to reliability, we define animals and animal testing as per the European Union regulations on this. When we look at relevance, it not only does the Leaping Bunny logo match laws in some countries, it actually goes beyond what the law requires in many other countries as well. So we could have, really feel confident in our response when applying those guidelines. If you look at the principle 4, transparency, on our website we communicate with not only interested businesses but also consumers around what the criteria is for being Leaping Bunny certified, and also which brands are certified, and whether they also apply to different other criteria. For example, whether a brand is also vegan, as one example. And accessibility, as I mentioned before, the Leaping Bunny logo is really recognized worldwide as a key sort of visualization of cruelty-free products. We ensure that we actively encourage that all brands place this on their products and basically show it off proudly, because we know that this really matches consumer demand for cruelty-free products. So we really feel strongly and could confidently, like I said, apply those guidelines. And then also we had some successes with some of the other aspirational principles. For example, the multi-channel and innovative approach. We work with businesses once they are certified on a launch moment. This is often through social media, for example, through a number of different interactive posts to celebrate the new certification. But increasingly, we are doing more advocacy, more partnership work with our Leaping Bunny certified businesses. For example, we partnered with The Body Shop, which is this photo here, that you'll see. We created a petition with them last year, which calling for the UN to ban cosmetics animal testing worldwide, and that received over 8.3 million signatures. So a huge success from our partnership with The Body Shop. And increasingly, we are working with organizations such as the Co-op in the UK, Coty, as I mentioned before, in the US, and others in Australia and New Zealand too, to really help connect the dots between business, consumers, and decision makers on this. And yeah, that was basically a quick overview of our successes from it. As an experience as a whole, we really found it to be a useful tool for assessing how we view the Leaping Bunny. We've never really analysed it in this manner before. The Leaping Bunny uses independent third-party auditors, which we think is part of its strength, and that was really reinforced through these guidelines for the process of being a road tester. And what it's done is also confirmed and reiterated our, the strength of the certification for us. It's also identified gaps for the future and really helped us form plans on where we want to grow the Leaping Bunny, target sort of sectors that we want to reach out to, how, like I mentioned before, developing data and evidence on specific consumer demand and impact on sustainability and consumption and production on their side, and also with our advocacy as well, through increasing the demand for action from decision makers, really to follow in the footsteps of the EU and other countries, as I mentioned, to prohibit the testing of cosmetic products and animals, hopefully resulting in a global harmonization of these laws. So yes, that is a quick overview of our experiences, but I'd be more than happy to take any questions if there's time, or if you want to drop me an email, you have it there, my phone number, once I'm back in London next week. It'd be great to chat with anyone who's interested. So thank you, Bettina and Fernanda and Naomi, throughout this whole process. You guys have been super supportive and always there to help all of our annoying questions, so we really appreciate it, and it's been a great experience for us.
Thank you so much, Jack, and I'm sure none of the questions were annoying. Thanks so much for this really interesting overview, and for all of you. So the case study about the Leaping Bunny is already available on our website. So please do read it. but we will also share that with you after the webinar. And now I would like to open it up for questions. So I invite you to either you just unmute yourself and just ask your question, or if you want to, you can also write in the chat box. Please don't be shy. If you have any questions to any of us, it could be around the case that Jack just presented, or around the report, any of the results of the report or the next steps. Or also, if you don't have questions, but if you would like to share with us your experience, please do go ahead. I thought somebody wanted to speak. Don't be shy.
People are shy.
Hello, I heard somebody.
Hi, Bettina.
Yes, hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Perhaps you can shortly also say who's speaking.
Oh, thank you very much for such a presentation. It is a critical moment for us here in South Africa as we're also trying to craft our framework for implementing these programs. So, but I was also struggling to get some of the sense of what you're saying because of the internet connectivity this side was struggling. So I was wondering if we can get like an email of your presentation, if possible.
Yes, of course. And actually, we are also recording that webinar, so we will share the recording of the webinar and the presentation with you afterwards.
Oh, okay, that should be great.
Okay, sorry about the sound if it wasn't good.
No, it's from my side actually. So thanks.
Sure, no worries. Are there any questions about the report or any comments? Would you like to tell us a bit more about your work? I see there's something in the chat box. So Holly is saying, happy to see progress of this work and how much it aligns with the US EPA's guidelines for assessing private sector standards and eco-labels for use in federal procurement. Indeed, and that's maybe also something to stress, that really we're not here to reinvent the wheel. We are really here to build upon other efforts as well. And for instance, the guidelines that Holly mentioned, you can also access them. We've linked them to our hub. And if you have a look at our hub and you feel that any of the documents that are relevant around product sustainability information are missing, please do let us know, and then we can upload it. Holly, around the next steps, yes. So we have a long list of to-dos now. So basically everything that Fernanda ran through about ideas of what we could work on, but we realized that even if our the consumer information program has over 100 partners, we can't do everything. So we are now prioritizing. One of the things that we have heard a lot and that we would find valuable is to continue holding workshops and promoting the guidelines. So we've done that last year a lot to hold workshops in countries and at conferences around the 10 principles and how they apply with company standard setters and other organizations. But the other thing is that we would like to also work a bit more on a sector basis. Meaning to look at the case studies we have now. And as Fernanda mentioned, we, for instance, have a lot of cases from food. We also find that textile seems to be a sector that many of our partners are interested in. So we are looking into how we can use the cases we have and the guidelines to give sector-specific guidance and trainings. And if any of you are interested to collaborate with us on this, please also let us know. Are there any questions? Other questions? Comments? Anything that surprised you? None? Everybody's happy? That's great. Good. I think then also from our side, I think we told you everything we wanted to tell you. One of the things we also want to do is really what helpful in the road testing exercise we find was also the exchange among the road testers. And as we said, we hope this will be with the case studies, that sharing the case studies will help others to learn from the experiences. But we will also want to continue building a community of practice and having, for instance, Jack talk to another standard tester that are just developing their standard and they want to know more about how can we promote that, or, you know, how do you use social media as well as on product information. So we really want to enable that sharing. And that's something that we'll also prioritize. The question on when the recording will be available, probably tomorrow. So we'll upload it to YouTube and then we will share the link with all of you. And please do feel free to also share it with your networks. Other than that, let me thank Fernanda and Zach for their interventions and for walking us through this report. Please do all download the report. Let us know any feedback you might have after reading it. And just stay in touch because, well, it's a report, but it's also a process. And for us, it's just another step on implementing the guidelines on a global level. So thanks so much for joining us today and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Christina, and you all. Bye-bye.